I call Ms Nicola Brogan.
Gary, Garmagad Pre-Laskin Corla, Kesh ever he and that whole question number 1, please.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the member for the question, and I would also like to recognise and welcome the considerable number of questions that I received related to the skills agenda. I also welcome the broad support for positive action and investment in this issue, which is so central to our economic and social prosperity. The recent consultation on skills for a 10x economy highlighted issues faced by young people, women with caring responsibilities and people with disabilities in accessing skills provision on the same basis as the rest of our population. The skills strategy emphasises the need to work across government to build education and career pathways suitable and accessible to everyone. And improving digital skills is a prime example where officials are already engaging with the Department of Education and other key stakeholders. It is recognised that digital skills are essential not just for economic development, but also for social inclusion and labour market participation. Addressing barriers to skills and employment goes beyond the skills system itself. Creating a culture of lifelong learning is one of the strategy's main objectives. This will require collaboration across government to recognise and address the social issues which hinder access to education. In this regard, my skills strategy team have already initiated dialogue with the Departments for Education and Communities, which are developing the Executive's childcare strategy and disability employment strategy respectively. I have also agreed to establish a subcommittee of the Skills Council to look specifically at the barriers to inclusion in the labour market and make recommendations in relation to government policy and interventions. I look forward to publishing the strategy and beginning the process of implementing the broad range of commitments contained within the new skills strategy.
Ms Brogan.
Garmagad Pre-Laskin Corla, and thank the Minister for his detailed answer there. Minister, you will be aware that there are a number of barriers facing women in particular, trying to get back into employment after having children. One of those, as you mentioned there, is access to affordable childcare. So, Minister, would you consider investing additional funding into the Women's Returners Programme to help mothers back into work and education?
Well, Mr Speaker, as I said in my initial answer, childcare is, of course, an issue that cuts across primarily the Departments of Education and Communities. However, it is something that we take an interest in as well, because we recognise how important it is to allow those with caring responsibilities, not just women, but more often than not, women, to get back in to the workplace. So I'm more than willing to work with executive colleagues to ensure that we have the sufficient childcare in place. I think it's one of the big issues that we are facing right now, not just to get people back into the workplace, but also to make sure that they have the proper skills that they need and the training that is needed for them to have those skills as well. So certainly, where my department can help, we stand ready to do so.
Mr Stephen Dunn.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, skills are indeed a vital part of growing our economy. Can I ask the Minister how important are the skills academies that his department is rolling out, particularly in addressing the short-term needs of the economy when many employers are struggling to find suitable employees? For example, I met with a tile business in my constituency last week, and he highlighted to me a lack of tilers which currently exists to meet demand. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr Speaker, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. No, I think all members will be aware of the issue of a skills shortage within the labour market right now, and the difficulties that those are causing for employers. And there are longer-term issues that we need to address, and I hope to be able to address that through the skills strategy. But we also have an immediate problem, and that's why I think that the Assured Skills Academies have done a fantastic job in making sure that where there are those gaps, that we try to fill them. One of the benefits in Northern Ireland of being small is that there's easy collaboration between industry, government and the educational institutions, and so we need to maximise the potential that can come from that. I am aware of the issues around tilers in particular. It's been raised with me recently at a constituency visit that I was involved in East Belfast. And so we recognise the problem that exists there, and my department stands ready to help where we can. So if the member has further detail or would like to get in contact with us, we can look into the possibility of setting up an assured skill academy. They operate not only in the trades that we've mentioned already, but also in financial services and IT and others as well. And they're a key and critical part of how we deal with the issues that we're facing now. However, we also need to be looking to the long term, and that's why the skills strategy is going to be so important.
Mr. Stuart Dixon.
Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, could you outline for the House how your skills strategy plans will address the lack of gender diversity in qualifications aligned particularly to STEM-focused jobs?
Well, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, it's absolutely the case that we want to make sure that there are opportunities available for everyone, regardless of who you are, where you're from, or indeed your gender. And I think that we need to look at that not only in the qualifications that we promote, but also in particular to look at one of the key objectives within the strategy, which is creating a culture of lifelong learning. Part of that, as I already mentioned in my answer to the first question, is about dealing with the barriers that exist. Now, those barriers are many. There are issues around childcare, issues around finance as well. But I don't want us to be in the position where we have a cohort of people that may well be able to get involved in different jobs and different skills, but feel that they can't because of their gender, and that's something that my department will want to make sure that we can rectify, so that the opportunities that we have available are available to everyone.
Mr. Morris Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. Question 2.
Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, with your permission, I would like to group questions 2, 11 and 15 together, as they all relate to the High Street scheme. There were 1.436 million applications made to the High Street scheme. Nearly all of the applicants who have submitted evidence have been processed. There are approximately 50,000 who have yet to provide the necessary evidence, who are still to be verified. All of these people will have received either an email or a letter in the post asking them to provide further information. There is currently one instance of potential fraud involving an application to the High Street scheme under investigation by the PSNI, and the Department has provided supporting evidence in relation to that. The scheme is still ongoing, and it is not possible at this moment in time to give a definitive figure in terms of overall costs. However, members will be aware that the Executive has provided £145 million to fund the scheme. As I outlined to the Assembly last week, I've also set aside around £21 million of Economic Recovery Action Plan funding to cover potential cost overruns in the scheme. And this is under constant review, and the latest projections indicate that around 5 to 8 million of this contingency may be required. But in the event that it is not required, I've instructed my officials to continue to investigate other avenues to ensure the funding can be utilised elsewhere to aid economic recovery. And finally, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, my message to everyone who receives their card is to spend local. Please use your card to support your local businesses which have been most affected by the COVID-19 restrictions. And in the supplementary questions, I look forward to hearing from members about where they have spent their card.
I have 4 children and Christmas is coming, so I'll give you a hint of where mine is going, Minister. Mr. Morris Bradley.
Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his answer there. He's actually answered part of my supplementary. And for his information, I didn't get a card yet, so I haven't spent it anywhere. But I welcome his response, and I suppose like many MLAs across all constituencies, I have had numerous inquiries about verification. And I know the Minister addressed that yesterday by sending out a communication that MLAs can now verify the identity of people. That's very good. But what more can be done to encourage people to spend their money in shops that were not open during the pandemic, so the economic benefit goes to those who need it most?
Thank you very much, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, and I also want to thank the member because it has come to my attention that he's actually been helping a family member of mine who lives in his constituency who needed to get additional information to be verified. So I thank him for that. But I also want to highlight the important issue that he has raised about how we can encourage people to spend their card locally. Ultimately, the power is in people's hands. We have used this scheme to try and help local businesses, but everyone who has received their card has a role to play in that. And so it's up to people to decide where they spend their card. But my message is to spend local, and importantly to make sure that everything that is left on the card is spent, because that's money that will otherwise come back to the department, and I want it to go in to support local businesses instead. So the very strong message is, even if it's only a few pounds left, use it in businesses, and in particular, like the member has rightly said, let's just help those businesses who were affected most by the restrictions that were imposed upon them, those that weren't able to trade for a long period of time, those who were forced to shut, that lost business and that had to deal with that and all of the consequences that came from it as well. And I hope that all members will join in sending out that message. This is an opportunity. Let's use it to support local business.
Thank you. This is the first occasion since he has been appointed Deputy Chair of the Committee that I can call Mr Matthew O'Toole and congratulate him on his appointment. Mr O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. I'll try not to get dizzy with my ascent to the rarefied heights. Minister, you've just talked about the importance of supporting local independent business with this card. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I'm sure you'll also agree that it's important to assess the efficacy and how effective policies are. I understand from your department that there is a dashboard being created using the authorisation codes of the spending with the local card. That will, I assume, be able to tell us how much of this money has been spent in large multiples, Tesco, Asda, companies like that, and indeed how much is going to be spent on what is known as Black Friday on the 26th of November. We'll then be able to judge how well this scheme has been supporting local independent businesses. Can you commit to publishing that data by authorisation code so we can assess how effective the policy has been?
Well, it's absolutely the case, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, that I want to be open and transparent on this, and with the data that we have, I want to make that available so that we can see whether or not the scheme has fulfilled its policy objective, which I absolutely believe that it has. It's still early days in the amount of money that is being spent. So we're seeing fluctuations in where that is going. However, the anecdotal evidence that I've received so far has been deeply encouraging. I'm hearing from local businesses in my own constituency and indeed in other constituencies that it has been a terrific lift for those independent retailers, because I think it is the case that the public see this as an opportunity to help businesses. They want to help local businesses, in particular those who were closed. So that's the evidence that we are getting already. We will have more of that as we come in. We'll have those facts and figures. I'm more than happy that we collate those and share those. Right now, though, of course, my focus is making sure that those last number of people are verified, and those that are verified have the ability to get their card activated and get the card spent as well. But we all have a role to play in that, and making sure that is going to where it needs to be going. But I think the other thing we need to realise is that we could have just given this money to businesses directly, but we have that additional spend that is coming because people aren't just spending their £100, oftentimes they're giving more as well, which is what we want to see. But above that, what I'm hoping we will see from this, and I'm seeing some evidence of this already from anecdotal evidence, that people will go back again to where they went before, or they will see other things that are on offer on the high street. So it's not just about where it's spent now, important as that is, it's about the longer term impact that it has. And I want to commend our businesses that are doing a fantastic job to incentivise that and seeing this as an opportunity to bring people back into the high street.
Mr John Stewart.
Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his answer so far. Minister, you were kind enough through your team to share the MLA helpline email address with me last week, and I didn't bombard it. I triaged the many issues I got and I sent some of them through. Unfortunately, the replies have been generic copies and pastes from the Northern Ireland Direct website. It has not provided me with the answers, or the constituents with the answers they need to some of these very difficult decisions and issues that they're having, whether it's a lost card or whatever. Is there and the man helpline just simply isn't helping either. I mean, is there anywhere else we can go to? And for those who have applied and not got a confirmation email and are now waiting 4 or 5 weeks since the beginning and still haven't got their card, should they be concerned? Thank you.
Mr Speaker, I acknowledge that as constituency officers we will have got quite a volume of correspondence and people coming in looking for help with the cards. Some of those issues are issues that directly relate to the department. Others are directly for the card provider, depending on whether the verification stage or whether there are actually issues with the card. I'm sorry to hear that there are continuing to be issues that he is facing. I know they're very small, though, in the overall number of applications and everything else that's been processed. I would encourage him to continue to use the email address that was sent to MLAs, but if he's still finding difficulties, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with him to see what the potential problems might be and how we can fix those.
Ms Cara Hunter.
Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, regarding some of the anti-fraud measures in place, a number of married women and transgender individuals are faming the name verification process. So I'm just wondering what measures your department has put in place to rectify this. Thank you.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I'm not aware if the member was in the chamber last week when I hope that I did address this issue and had indicated that the department is now showing maximum flexibility. So if someone is coming to us with evidence and they show a birth certificate and other information, even if those don't match up, I'm going to do everything that we can to make sure that those applications are verified. I also announced yesterday that if someone is coming to the member as a constituent and that she's prepared to stand over and can see the evidence or is convinced that this person is a legitimate applicant, then approval from herself will be enough. We trust her and other members to provide that information. So I hope that I've been able to demonstrate the whole way through this process how I'm responding to the issues as they arise and to make sure there's maximum flexibility shown so that we can address all of these issues. In a scheme where over 1.4 million people are getting these cards, sometimes there are issues that arise, but I think that we demonstrated that we're responding quickly to them and doing everything that we can, and I hope that that's an assurance to the member today.
Mrs Dolores Kelly.
Deputy Speaker, question 3, Minister.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I have concerns that careers guidance in schools is not ready to meet the challenges of the future economy. In the next few months, I will set out my own vision to improve the wider careers and skills system, including clear short-term actions and longer-term direction to ensure that our careers systems and workforce skills align with our priority of a 10x economy. Therefore, I'm pleased to announce today that I will be commissioning an independent review of the Department's careers guidance provision in schools, with a focus on the timing and mode of delivery. In addition, my department will develop a careers and skills portal to enhance our digital offering. The world of work is changing. The world of work is changing at a rapid pace. Our aim is to ensure that young people are aware of the opportunities available in emerging and growth sectors and are encouraged to attain the skills needed to fully engage with the workforce of the future. That's why it is so important that we engage with pupils at an early age and families on an ongoing basis to ensure our young people have the advice and skills to navigate the ever-changing world of work. And my department is working closely with the Department of Education on the joint Transition of Young People into Careers 14 to 19 project. And the project has considered careers as one of its key work streams. And I expect that the outputs, which the Education Minister and I will consider shortly, will include a number of careers-related actions.
Mrs Kelly.
I welcome the Minister's innovation in relation to this. Has long been a concern of mine in relation to careers advice. But can you tell me, will the careers advice service sit within your department as opposed to be something of a postcode lottery across different schools, and the energy and the budget, I suppose, that they have then to actually provide that advice?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I've said since coming into this office that my objective is to build a healthy economy that delivers for everybody, no matter where you are, where you're from or who you are, and that comes to careers as well. I want to make sure that everyone has the access to the information that is up to date, information that is relevant. I want to include young people and families and parents in that decision-making process as well, because I've been in this job a few months now and I see the incredible opportunities that exist in Northern Ireland today. And when you go round and you see those opportunities, it's really easy to be hopeful for the future, but we need need to make sure that as we build this 10x economy, that we have the young people that are aware of those opportunities, not just when they turn 16 or 17, but from an earlier age, so that we can prepare and that young people can prepare and see those fantastic opportunities. And that shouldn't be on the basis of where you live. That should be the same across the board.
Mrs Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. I want to welcome what the Minister has just said there and the collaborative approach with the Department of Education as well. Northern Ireland has exciting opportunities that exist for our tech and creative industries, and that's really exciting to see that grow. But would the Minister agree with me that there is a perception that careers guidance is not adequately providing students, indeed parents or those searching for jobs, with real-world information on what skills or qualifications are needed for jobs now and future job markets?
First of all, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, can I take this opportunity to welcome the member to the House? I don't think I've had the opportunity to do that in the Chamber yet anyway, and wish her well in her role, and also thank her for her question. And she's absolutely right. We do need to make sure that we have careers guidance and career system in place that's responsive to the real world that we're living in today. And I want young people and parents to have that up-to-date information about where the opportunities are and how they can harness those opportunities as well to maximise the potential outcome for them. And that's why I'm going to be commissioning this review. I want stakeholders to be involved, but it's important that it's done quickly because I don't want us to miss out on the opportunities that are out there.
Mr Pat Sheehan.
One of the major difficulties in the current career system is that personalised advice isn't available to students until year 12. Is there any plan within the career strategy to make personalised advice available at year 10 before students pick their GCSE subjects? Well,
the member makes an important point, not just about the personalised nature of careers advice, but the age at which that is available. And I think it is important that as early as possible we're exposing young people to the opportunities and the routes that are open to them. I certainly haven't put any barriers in the way to that, or haven't come down on one side or the other, but I think it is worthy of consideration. And I think that if you look at what employers are doing and how they want to be involved, I think it's actually a good idea to make sure that they are exposed and that we see the interests of the young people from as early an age as possible. So that will all be part of the review.
Mr Robbie Butler.
For his answers. As the Minister noted, the Department for Education's Fair Start report into educational underachievement, but the expert panel concluded there is no parity of esteem or understanding between academic and vocational pathways and future job opportunities among pupils, parents and families, and if he has, would he be prepared to comment on it?
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, that's an issue that's raised time and time again, and it's certainly something that as a department we will look into, and it will be a key part of what we're trying to do in careers as well.
Question number 4 has been withdrawn. Mr Chris Little.
Question 5, please.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, it's crucial that we prepare our young people to access high-quality jobs in delivering our vision of a 10x economy. My department has already made significant progress in this regard, including through the reform and simplification of the vocational pathways with skills for life and work and traineeships, by working with employers across a wide range of sectors to ensure that apprenticeship training reflects the changing needs of industry, and investment in the further education sector, which is critically placed to meet the needs of young people. Looking forward, it's absolutely essential that we work collaboratively across our education and training landscape to ensure our young people have the knowledge and the skills to succeed. That is why my department jointly leads the Transition of Young People into Careers 14 to 19 project alongside the Department for Education. On completion of the project's initial phase, which sought to establish the baseline position and identify the key challenges, The former DE and DFE ministers agreed to the development of a strategic framework. This framework, which will set out the actions that are required to transform the 14 to 19 education and training landscape, will also play a fundamental role in the delivery of my vision for a 10x economy, in delivering the policy objectives set out in the draft skills strategy and in fulfilling New Decade, New Approach commitments. The project is currently finalising the strategic framework, and the Education Minister and I expect to consider this in the coming weeks. The actions in the framework, along with the other activities across education and economy, will help ensure that young people have the appropriate skills which will help them secure jobs in the future labour market.
Mr Little.
Thank the Minister for his answer. The 14 to 19 strategy consultation started, I understand, in 2018. And recently the Department of Economy and Department of Education cancelled briefings to the Committee for Education and the Committee for Economy in relation to the 14-19 strategy. Despite this, 1 in 5 young people are misaligning their educational pathways and their career aspirations, and 84% of students are unaware of the Department of Economy Careers Service. So can I ask the Economy Minister, what is complicating the pathway to delivery for such an important strategy?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I certainly agree that this is an important strategy, and therefore it's important that we get it right. As I previously mentioned, the project is finalising the strategic framework, and the draft documents are currently being considered by senior officials within the Department for Education and the Department for the Economy prior to being submitted to the Education Minister and myself for deliberation. And I think that it's more appropriate to provide both committees with a more comprehensive briefing on the strategic framework once the Education Minister and I have had the opportunity to agree this.
Mr John O'Dowd.
Minister, in my time in the Department of Education, I tried to unearth the 14 to 19 strategy. It is elusive, it is difficult to tie down, and I hope now that there are, as you say, there's documents in place, and they will come before the Ministers before the end of this mandate and go out and become policy. But that policy has to include support for young people, particularly those young people who benefit from organisations such as Include Youth, who support young people who have left school and require further education and further training. Will a future 14 to 19 strategy continue to include support from the community and voluntary sector?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, the member has rightly stated the importance of the community and voluntary sector to this particular piece of work, and although the strategy is still being finalised, I think that we all recognise the important role that it has to play.
Mr Matthew O'Toole.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, Minister, the 14 to 19 strategy is critical. One of the things that I don't think it's going to look at, nor is it mentioned in the 10X strategy, is the crisis that is particular to this place, which is around educational and economic migration among young people. Frankly, it's called brain drain sometimes. It's a crisis that we have that's particular to here. Can I ask that you and your department do something you haven't done up to now, which is take a proper look at developing a strategy aimed at tackling our very high levels of educational and economic migration among young people? Far too many young people leave this place either to go to university or simply for work, and they never think of coming back.
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I would encourage the member to take a look at the skills strategy consultation document that we have produced, because it actually does accurately reflect where the needs are within the economy, where there's a shortfall, the levels at which there's a shortfall, and where there is an oversupply. And in fact, in terms of university places and young people going over the water for university, what I think you'll actually find is that a lot of those are determined leavers, people who regardless of the places that are available here, have decided to go elsewhere. And it's very, very difficult if somebody wants to go away in that way, not to, for them not to. However, I want to make sure that people have opportunity here, whatever level that is at. And of course, I want to encourage people not just to look at higher education as a pathway, but also further education as well, because there are some fantastic opportunities in our colleges here as well. But certainly, I want to keep people in Northern Ireland. I want people to come back to Northern Ireland as well.
Mr Mike Nesbitt.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, as the member will be aware, the Parental Bereavement Leave and Pay Bill passed its second stage on the 14th of June, and since that date it has been with the Economy Committee, of which he is a member for scrutiny. During that time, the committee has received a volume of written evidence and numerous responses to its queries relating to the bill. The committee has also been briefed by departmental officials on a number of occasions throughout the year and 3 times in the last month. I have also personally corresponded with the committee to reiterate the importance of the bill, and I have highlighted the potential risk to the rollout of the Parental Bereavement Leave and Pay Bill should there be any deviation from the provisions outlined in the bill. The Speaker's recent announcement of the fact that there are bills progressing through the Assembly that will run out of time and fail to become law has worried me. But what has worried me even further is the fact that despite the risk identified by the Speaker, the bill has been potentially jeopardised by further amendments which could seriously hinder, if not block, its passage in this mandate. And should this bill fall as a result of amendments pushing it to the point of running out of time, let us be clear what that will mean. It means there will be a denial of the same rights, entitlements and support for working parents in Northern Ireland following a child bereavement as that which is presently given to working parents in the rest of the UK. And as the member will be aware, departmental officials have advised the committee of the inherent risks associated with bringing forward amendments that seek to remove the 26-week qualifying period or to integrate miscarriage provisions into a parental bereavement bill. This bill is the result of painstaking work carried out over a number of years by departmental officials. It has had wide-ranging consultation with members of the public, and substantial in-depth legal advice has been sought from the Office of Legislative Counsel and the Departmental Solicitor's Office. That is how legislation should be developed, with due care and with the close involvement of a significant number of stakeholders.
Unfortunately, that was a very important question and a very important answer. If members had maybe taken a bit less time earlier in asking questions, Mr Nesbitt would have been in position to ask a supplementary on that very important question. We move on now to topical questions, and the first member on my list is Mr Chris Little.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Economy Minister if he will join me in welcoming the announcement of the creation of 1,000 new high-value jobs at global company Almac, and if he would agree that this is a positive example of the competitive advantage that can be gained by companies based in Northern Ireland with the linkages both to GB and EU markets that the Northern Ireland Protocol affords.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, the member will not be surprised to hear that I agree with him completely in that I want to welcome the jobs that have come to Northern Ireland. I don't think there's any surprise there that I'm delighted that there has been further investment by this company in Northern Ireland. I'm delighted at the jobs that are going to be created and the opportunities that that will present for people not just in that area but wider afield in Northern Ireland. Again, what I'm hearing again and again is that the best thing that we have to offer is actually the skills and the talent of our young people, and companies have been telling me that's why they are reinvesting. The member also mentions the access that we have right now to the UK and to the EU. Of course, it's only partial access, because our big problem that we face is the difficulty getting goods from the UK into Northern Ireland and the additional bureaucracy that we have there and the effect that that's having on businesses. That's the problem that we face right now. It is a real problem. It is a challenge that is being faced, and I see members of the Alliance Party shaking their heads, but it is a challenge that is being faced by businesses right now, and yet they continue to acknowledge, they continue to fail to acknowledge that there is a problem, that there is an issue with that. And my focus and the focus of my party and those on these benches is to ensure that we deal with those difficulties. That's where my focus is, and I hope that's where the focus of others is as well.
Mr Little.
Thank the Minister for his response. And further to this significant job announcement, can I ask the Economy Minister what further work he is undertaking with InvestNI to promote Northern Ireland as an investment location?
Well, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, I work very closely with Invest NI trying to promote Northern Ireland, and I'm delighted that we have had success in recent months. I'm pleased that we have new investors for the first time. I'm pleased that investors that had previously invested are coming back again. And in fact, recently, it was one of the companies had told me that one of the reasons they were coming back was actually because of our Assured Skills Academies and the fact that business, together with government and along with higher and further education institutions, are working collaboratively and are able to provide that level of support. So that goes on a number of levels, and I'll always stand ready to promote Northern Ireland and our people across the world.
Ms Sinead Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. And similar to the earlier question, I want to ask a very specific question to the Minister for the Economy. Does he believe that dual access to the UK and the EU markets are an advantage or a disadvantage?
Well, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, it's not an advantage when the consequence of it is that we are cut off from our biggest market, from the rest of the UK. There are trade barriers that are put in place. There's additional difficulties, and the members on that side of the House will not acknowledge that it is an issue. They are shaking their heads. They are not listening to businesses. They are not understanding the concerns that are being expressed. This isn't coming from me. This is businesses who are telling me about the additional bureaucracy, the additional cost, the additional hours that are needing to be spent filling out paperwork and dealing with all of those issues. And if they would at least acknowledge it, it would go some way towards helping us. But there, even today, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, you can see that whenever I'm saying that some businesses are having problems bringing goods from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, they're refusing to even acknowledge that there is a problem. And if you fail to acknowledge that there is a problem, you're never going to come up with a solution.
Ms Bradley.
Thank you. I think history will show disappointment that we have an economy minister who does not see access to both markets as an advantage. Invest NI are entrusted to seek foreign direct investment, and one would anticipate that their messaging should be a fanfare to the world that this place does have access to both those markets. And I'm going to quote the headline position on Invest NI's website that states Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom and it's an ideal location for international firms looking to set up new operation. There is no mention of our envious economic position. Neither is there any reference.
I'm loath to interrupt. This questions need to be more focused. I really do regret having to interrupt the member, but if she could please come to the question.
I appreciate your intervention, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, but hopefully on hearing the question you will understand why I felt a need to contextualise it. There is no mention of that, but they also go on to boast that salary costs are around 30% lower. Can the Minister advise if he or his former colleagues had any part to play in Invest NI being mute on our economic advantage and their lack of ambition to reach out and secure good-paying jobs for this place based on it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think it's just absolutely ridiculous that the member will not even acknowledge the problems that exist with the Northern Ireland Protocol. And they have continued to refuse to acknowledge the fact that there are problems and that there are issues. Our heads are stuck in the sand. Now, what I'm trying to do is sort that out. And as a party, we're trying to make sure that those issues are dealt with. And it's really disappointing that the party cannot even acknowledge that there are issues. However, I'm more than happy to stand over the record, and indeed the record of my predecessors, in trying to attract jobs and investment to Northern Ireland, and highlighting the positive things that we have to sell here, to talk about our young people, to talk about the opportunities, and indeed to bring high-quality, well-paying jobs to Northern Ireland. And I'm more than happy to stand over that record. I'm concerned about the trade frictions that we're experiencing right now. I'm concerned about the impact that that's having on business. She obviously doesn't even recognise that it's happening. I do, and I'm going to do something about it.
Point of orders aren't taken during question time. At the conclusion of question time, I'm happy to take your point of order. Question number 3 in the name of Mr William Irwin has been withdrawn. Ms Rachel Woods.
Principal Deputy Speaker, Minister, your department commissioned independent research into the economic, environmental and social impacts of onshore petroleum exploration and production in Northern Ireland, and the final research report from Hatch Regeneris was received in July 2021. So can I ask when you intend to publish the report?
So, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, the member will be aware that the Department is undertaking reviews of both mineral and petroleum licensing regimes to ensure that they are fit for purpose. As the member has correctly outlined, the Department had commissioned 2 pieces of research into the economic, societal and environmental impacts of onshore petroleum exploration and extraction in Northern Ireland, as well as mineral exploration and mining. And the research on the impacts of the licensing has been completed. It will inform the consideration of evidence-based policy options by the Executive, and I hope to be in the position to bring these options to my Executive colleagues later in the year. The preferred option will then be subject to public consultation. The research on the impacts of mineral exploration, however, is at an earlier stage and will inform the Department's initial consideration of the scope of those issues to be considered.
Ms Woods.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for his answer. He has touched upon the policy options. In a letter to me, you had stated earlier this year that you would bring policy options to the Executive for final approval prior to public consultation, and you've referenced that in your answer. Minister, do you have a date?
Mr Speaker, don't have a date. That will go to the Executive first before, in order for us to get Executive agreement on that.
Question number 5 has been withdrawn. I call Ms Linda Dillon.
Thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, could you advise if InvestNI plan to buy any lands for industrial sites in Mid-Ulster? We have the highest rate of VAT-rated businesses outside of Belfast city centre, and yet we have the worst infrastructure and the least lands in terms of business being able to develop.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I don't have particular information on her own constituency. However, I would be more than happy to speak with officials in the department, see if I can find that information for her and make sure that that is given to her. I hope she'll appreciate it. It's a very niche issue. It's not something that I have here in front of me. I've said before, though, wherever you're from, whatever constituency, I want to make sure that we are helping businesses to grow and more businesses to start and more investors to come in, and anything that I can do to help in Mid-Ulster or indeed in any constituency, I will be there to do that.
Ms Dillon.
Minister for his answer, and this may seem a very niche issue, but Mid-Ulster actually produces 85% of the world's crushing and screening equipment. There is nothing niche about it. We have a real lack of skills within Mid-Ulster. Would the Minister commit to at least looking at the potential for a skills academy within the Mid-Ulster area?
Mr Speaker, I was talking about the figures themselves. Was not in any way talking about the industry, because I know the importance of Mid-Ulster and manufacturing in particular. But I would be more than happy to look at any proposals that come forward for assured skills academies. I think I said earlier, I was in Ballymena this morning looking at a welding academy that is going to be open for applications from next week. These are fantastic collaborations between business and between industry. And government and further and higher education. And if there is that specific need to address a specific problem right now, we'll be more than happy to look at that and see if and how we can help.
Mr Colin McGrath.
Principal Deputy Speaker, and maybe I should remind the Minister that we never deny that there are any problems as a result of Brexit. That's why we didn't support it, and it's a pity that members on the other side of the House didn't join us in that, and we wouldn't be in the debacle that we face. But following on from the line that we had from my colleague, can I ask, can you detail to me, because I'm sure, Minister, you'll agree with me that Downpatrick is a wonderful town and it has much to offer. And could I ask you, what specific direct investment and work have you done for the town of Downpatrick from you've taken over as Economy Minister?
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, if the member was opposed to the protocol or didn't like the protocol, why did he call for its rigorous implementation? Why did he call for its rigorous implementation? It's a question that we still haven't had the answer to. But I hope that this is a change of tone now from the SDLP, and that they do recognise the problems that exist with it, and are prepared to work with those that want to see those problems addressed, in particular the concerns that there are in relation to the UK's internal market. Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I'm sure that Downpatrick is a fantastic town which has lots of potential. I'm sure that it is benefiting from the work of my department, whether that's in higher education, further education, or skills, or telecoms, and I hope that there will be properties in his constituency that will benefit from Project Stratum that is coming about as a result of the DUP Conservative Confidence and Supply Agreement money that was made available, £150 million. I'm not sure if there is particular support that Invest NI directly have given. However, I do know that Tourism NI have invested a lot in that area. In fact, last week I was at the World Tourism Market in London, and there were folks there from the local council who were telling me all that there was to see and to do in that area, of course supported by Tourism NI. So I'm sure that my department in Downpatrick and the whole of South Down are helping people there as we seek to build that healthy economy that delivers opportunity for everybody.
Mr McGrath.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, and I think you'll find it was Brexit that we were opposed to, and there wouldn't have been any problems if that didn't progress. But just on the issue of Downpatrick, lots of I'm sure's, lots of I hopes, and lots of might be's. We need to have an economy minister that's going to stand up for the people of Downpatrick. So if I ask this question again in the future, can you give me a definitive list of what you're doing so that I can go back to the people of Downpatrick and say that the department is doing all it can for them?
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, unfortunately I have not yet received an invite from Mr McGrath to visit Downpatrick. I was in South Down yesterday. I was very pleased to be in South Down. I was invited down to Kilkeel to see the fantastic work that is being done there at Collins Aerospace and the fantastic opportunities that there are. I'm very grateful to that company for inviting me down, and maybe the member would like to take an opportunity to invite me to his constituency, and I'd be more than willing to listen to the concerns of people. I want to thank all of the members who have invited me to their constituencies. There's Mr Newton and Mr Buckley and Mr Bradley, others right across this chamber, and if anybody else wants to invite me, I will be more than willing to visit and to be able to tell the member about all the things that are happening in Downpatrick.
Mercifully, that concludes economy questions. Mrs Bradley.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I accept your ruling.